whether it be alder or ash, there's a range that you want to be in. Pretty much all the custom shop guitars are. I mean, are vendors, and it goes through several steps of pass and no pass, but it has to be within a certain weight range. And it doesn't change the tone of the way that it's just a different tone. It changes the way the guitar resonates. So the more dense the wood, the heavier it is. The higher pitches tend to resonate longer. The lower stuff kind of goes away first. And the opposite of the really lightweight stuff is because those low frequencies are able to last longer. But then the higher frequencies don't stand out as much. It's just, it's not a huge difference like oh, I don't want that. It's gonna sound wrong. It's just a very subtle thing, and depending on whether you play with distortion or not distortion, and all that stuff changes your tone. So it's kind of just, you search for the one, it's just like, wow, something that matches your playing. But it's also what's with the light ones, they're comfortable with your playing.
Oh yeah, no, it's...
I've only known one guitar player that's preferred heavy guitars, and that was Randy Rhoads. And a lot of those guitars in the 80s, everybody wanted a heavy guitar. Because I heard heavy ones, everybody still sounded like they sounded. Yeah. Eddie Van Halen sounds like Eddie Van Halen, whether it's Steinberger or Kramer or Charbel. It's not a huge difference.
Right.
A lot of people get real nervous. Well, what if I pick the wrong wood? It's going to suck.
Yeah. Take a quick picture of it.
Just all kinds of stuff on them. Other people, it's like, you know what? I don't really want so much paint removed, but I want, this or that, and I like that. And what Eric said in the video is like, well, I always used to buy guitars with lots of fingerboard wear, because that's like a restaurant. If you walk by a restaurant and lots of people are eating, that means it's a good restaurant. He says, so when you see this fingerboard wear, that means it's a good guitar.
Yeah.
And that was Eric's, interpretation of things that he looked for in a used guitar.
It's the most unique process that you've done when relishing a guitar.
I'm going to guess they're all unique. They don't feel unique to me because I do them all the time. But if you were to come in the shop and see how it's done, I mean, you'd be just like, wow. It's several different levels of because you first got to make the guitar new, and then you've got to back it up, and then you can scrape paint off in certain ways. You can remove it with templates. You can sandblast it. You can do this to it. You can do, and it all gives you different degrees of wear and texture. And one of the things. I like texture. I've had people freak out. It's like there's a dent on the back of the neck. It's like, well, yeah, old guitars have dents on the back of the neck. And it's evolved now to where it's like I just want to really, really abuse the back of the neck because I love the way that feels, just all lumpy and rippled. And I got that out of the Brownie project. This is, I would say, somewhere where we meet in the middle. There's some there, but it's not going to be annoying to somebody, hopefully, that there's some little dents back here. But that Brownie neck was just really beat up. It had marks all over the back of it, and one of the marks that went down the back of the neck was actually where it had been leaning against the drum riser, and as the drummer was playing it vibrated, and it etched this long line down the back of the neck. But I love feeling all that texture back there when you're playing. It just makes you want to just hold it all that much more. And I think the Relic itself is actually, to me, more about the texture, not so much the look. I mean, the look is cool too, but it's the feel when you pick it up and play it, and you want to rub your hands over it, and some of those exposed areas, they just feel right.
The cool thing in the custom shop, these guys are like students of how guitars are aged, and how the real deal. And it's really cool to see each builder has. You have some different tools that some of the other guys don't have, right? With your Relic, and they all approach it differently, and
some of these tools are made like I need a tool that makes this mark on a guitar every time. And other times, it's, I need something sharp. Perfect. You know, and that becomes the tool for that every time. Or you're doing something and it's like, I need something sharp, too sharp, you know. And so you end up with this pile of tools that look like screwdrivers and blocks of wood and stuff, but they all make a certain type of wear on the guitar. And everybody has. It's the poor guy that has to buy tools for the shop. You know, it's like, these aren't the right rasps. I can't use these. Who told you to buy these? Well, that's what so-and-so uses. Well, that's fine for him. I need these. And it's almost the same file, you know. But it's, you know, thank God they do that, because, you know, it makes it easier for us to get along when we all get what we want.
One of the master builders, Dennis Galuska, told me, you know, when he's out at like an amp show, or you know, he'll come to a roadshow and he'll see some guitars, he can spot from across the room and tell you, oh, Todd relic that one, Jason Smith relic that one, because somehow, you know,
I can't help it. I can't help it.
Yeah.
I call it. I say mine are exactly different. Because all the I have guitars that I've done for myself. They're 10 years apart, and the dents are almost in the same place. The scratches are similar, but there's the same amount. It's almost like an OCD thing. It's like, no, 3 scratches, 4 doesn't look right, you know. Or then I might decide that 5's the way to go, but they all have the wear in the same areas. Some's heavier than others, but no two are alike, because each one is done. It's not a pattern or a mask or anything like that. It's literally chipped and scraped, and that's what gives me that exactly different. And I try so hard sometimes when I'm given the opportunity to do something for a show. It's like, well, nobody's going to be able to tell this is my relic, and I get done with it. It's like, damn it, because I'm telling a story. You know, it's just like each one of these dents I do is like, this is from this happens from that, this is buckle wear, this is bench wear, this is from the cord. You know, these here are from putting the cord through the strap, and then you bring it back around and it clacks against the body here, and then these here are from, you know, doing this. They're all put there for a reason. It's not just like, okay, then you take a chain and you whack, 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 and it's done, you know. And you can tell when somebody's done that to a guitar, because that's what it looks like. When these guitars are relicked, there's a purpose behind the type of wear that's there, you know, whether depending on how the guy held the guitar, you know, if he rubbed his sleeve on here a lot, or maybe he finger picked so he didn't get the sleeve burn, you know, how much wear is going to be on the back, whether the back of the neck is completely stripped, you know, that's popular, but I've kind of fallen in love with the textured half lacquer, half wood, once again from that Brownie project. It's like, I like that variation that I'm feeling when I'm playing it. It's just, some people want just all the paint removed because it feels slick and fast, you know.
What about pickups? Some of you guys make your own. Some are Josephina's now.
Yeah.
And Fender has like a lot of different pickups.
There is a lot of pickups, and that might be one of the reasons why I don't make pickups. The other reason is it's just going to take away from me building the guitar. Not that that's a good or bad thing, but at this point, if I was to do hand-wound pickups, you know, what would you say the order rate would be, you know? And it would be just another thing.
That'd be nuts.
Yeah, to where it's like, well, I can't, you know, hey, where's my guitar? It's like, well, I'll get to it. I have to wind these pickups right now because.
What's another whole sub?
Yeah, and it's. I like the work Josefina does. I love the work that Abby does.
Yeah.
You know, and she'll do it exactly the way I want them, but it's more or less. She's an expert at it. You know, it makes it consistent.
Does whoever orders it, do they kind of ask they want a hotter pickup, they want a more old school pickup, and then you translate that to the pickup builders?
That's pretty rare, to where I get somebody that I want this pickup, but I want it chimier or warmer. If somebody has a recipe like that, they'll usually say, yeah, I want the fat 50s, but I want so many wounds on it. But that's pretty rare. Most of the stuff that we have, people like them the way they are. You know, it's like, I want the fat 50s, I want the 60s, I want the 65s, I want the 54s, the noiseless pickups, the hot noiseless pickups. That kind of covers a lot of stuff right there. I mean, and the difference in those pickups is that was Leo going, well, why don't we put this kind of wire on there, or less winds, or more winds, or.
We do get requests though, guys saying, I want the fat 57, I want it 50% underwound, or I want the red hots, but I want them a little hot, and we've accommodated.
I did some 50s pickups. They were 12 ohms. You know, that's a lot of winds, and it barely fit under the cover, but that's what they wanted. And it was loud and bombastic. It was cool, you know.
It's pretty amazing to see Josefino or Abby when she was winding, and watch them do their thing, because it's really kind of an art, you know, just like when these guys do the relics and stuff. And it's like a really fluid motion. It's kind of mesmerizing, you know. But it's
yeah. Abby had these like moves that she says, well, I do this for a while, then I kind of do this a couple times, and then I move it over here, and each pickup she did, she went through that same routine, you know, and that was part of
the magic.
The scatter wind.
You should pass the recipe down to Josefina.
Yeah.
The feedback that we're getting worldwide is that those pickups her pickups are phenomenal, and that they're on par, and it's really heartwarming that it's a secret recipe, right? And
well, it's a touch. It's an art to doing it.
Yeah.
It's cool to watch.
And it's consistent, you know. If we all had access to the pickup winder in the shop, we'd all be like clubbing each other. It's my turn, get off, you know. It's one of those things. Once again, it keeps the peace. The shop's pretty cramped. I mean, we all don't have areas for pickup winders in our bench area, so it literally would be before hours or after hours on the pickup winder, and then using the potter, and it's not something I would rule out, but at this point, it still doesn't make enough sense to me personally for me to do that.
That's what we have a
because it's not going to be better than what she's doing.
But that's what I mean. You're building the guitar, finishing it, all that stuff, and then the order says they want a certain pickup. You go to your builders and get the pickup that fits that guitar.
Yeah. I have a parts ninja named Susanna. Her job is to keep track of all the parts and find the parts and hide the parts. You know. And what I do is I give her a list of all the parts for that guitar, and she comes back with a box of all those parts. She works with Josefina as far as these pickups are in stock, these have to be custom made, so then she'll put it in an order with Josefina. And what I get is a couple days later, I get a bag of everything I need, which saves me a lot of time of it doesn't sound like it would take long, but the way the shop is there's no order to the parts. I mean, they're kind of in some sort of order, but they're also kind of put where there's room. So you'll get the screw, the strap button, the keys are in the other room. Oh, this bin's empty. Where's the overflow? Oh, that's in the other room. Okay, now I need the bridge. Well, that's down there. You know, so you can literally spend 20, 30 minutes just trying to gather up parts for one guitar. You know, an hour if you get lost, you know, or if there's something missing. So we added Susanna, and she's the ninja. She just keeps track, makes sure that we don't run out of everything, and if we do, you know, it's on her to keep reminding somebody that we need that part.
Good.
How involved are you with the Jackson Custom Shop being both owned by Fender? Is there any crossover at all?
Right now, I like to go over there and hang out with Mike every once in a while. I mean, I worked with Mike for 10 years. I was his, you know, me and him were the pin router guys. We did all the woodworking. As Pat McGarry was the milling guy. He's still there. So it's really cool that they're in the same factory, and I can actually go over there and talk to them about, you know, this guitar or that guitar, and hey, somebody posted this on Facebook. You know, have you seen the picture? And Red Dave's working over there too, which is between those three guys. I mean, that's a super duper, Jackson team right there.
There's no crossover like building wise, but I mean they do bounce a lot of ideas off one another, and you all have a long history.
Yeah.
I'm going on record say 2 of those guys are redheads too.
Technically, I'm a redhead.
How long is the typical relicking process? Is it days, weeks?
Hours.
Is it really? That's all
Yeah.
it is?
For me to do this wear pattern, I can only do like 2, maybe 3 of these in a day because I get blisters so bad from doing it, rubbing the stuff that, or actually 3 of them a week because then it's, but it takes a couple hours per neck just to get all these little finger wears and get the dirt in them just right, and the stain and the sanding the paint off the back and, the dents and put the decal on it. It's rosewood boards are a lot easier because you don't have this option. I could do a rosewood board and then kind of put this ghosting in but so you see a lot of rosewood relics in team built because they don't have to do this.
How about wood? Do you pick your own wood?
I pick my own wood from wood that has been pre-selected several times before I even get to see it. So in order for me to find the right piece, I don't have to go through like pallets of wood, here it is. I have a pallet of the right wood, so at that point it's just I'm looking at the grain pattern and what works best for what I'm doing. If it's a solid color, I want the grain to be a certain way. If it's an ash guitar that's going to be like a 2-tone burst, I want something that's going to be really cool that's showing through,
We get the best pick of wood in the whole company. It goes right. It's Custom Shop.
Yeah, I'd heard that before, but I didn't know the builders went pick their own.
Some of the
stash
maple, some of the maple companies. I mean, it's really not even in their best interest to go to all the trouble they go to, but they dig it. It's just like, yeah, but this is going to a Fender Strat, So they kind of go along with us, whereas anybody else, if it was a furniture company or a fancy clock company, they tell them it's like, get lost, this is good wood.
Do you have one lumber yard that you use, or do you have multiple?
Multiple.
You do? Okay, yeah. Milled on site? Is it milled at your location?
It comes in milled a certain way. So it's stacked and it's on a pallet, but then it gets milled beyond that to dimension, and then it gets cut out and all that stuff. If you come into Corona and take the factory tour, they'll show you all that stuff. Someday that'll be a virtual tour online.
Yeah,
would be kind of cool.
How many builds do you usually do in a year? I mean, is it really all over the place?
It is all over the place. Yeah. Why do you ask?
I'm just curious.
Is it better if I build more or less?
No, yeah, I know. Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Because I always feel like if I build too many, then people think it's like, well, that's too much.
The complexity of each build is different,
right?
So that plays in.
And it is as many as I can.
Okay.
And some days it's I wish it was as many as I felt.
Yeah.
Because I'm tired,
Yeah.
How long is your backlog?
It's about 2 years.
Really?
Wow. Are you like other manufacturers where you can pay to move up in the queue, or a cheaper price to move down?
I try not.
Don't even answer.
If I understood that correctly, do I manipulate the numbers? I do, but as little as possible. If it's a matter of like weeks, but it's the same guitar, I'll do the two together because it makes sense. It makes it easier on me. It's
sufficient.
If somebody needs something,
do you give artists preferential treatment?
Yes. That's always been the case because the artists sell the guitars. If I give Eric a guitar with a different color, guess what?
Then you're 3 years back.
But I try to. Well, some people like Frank. When I deliver a guitar, they just automatically order another one. So it's just that continuous cycle. There's always stuff coming in here, and that's why, because he thinks ahead. But there are occasions where, like with the 60th anniversary 54, well, that order was placed this year, but I built it this year. I built it right away for several reasons. One of them being is because there's a lot of parts that are special to that guitar, and 2 years from now it would be hard to get those parts. And I thought, well, it is the anniversary and it is celebration, so maybe that's one of the perks of ordering that guitar is you get it this year.
So if somebody ordered a 54 Strat today, built by you, you'd build
the
it
anniversary. Yeah, I would move it up. I try to accommodate as many people as I can, but the problem with doing that is somebody ultimately gets something later, and the more you do that, it's like, well, hey, you told me it was going to be 2 years. It's been 3. Oh, sorry. I can't do that either. So I'm limited to how much I could do that, but there are circumstances where yeah, I do that.
Can you paint the picture of how you start to finish when an artist comes and he says, here's my original Strat from 54, I love this, duplicate it. What is the process when you get it in your hand? Just kind of give us a quick rundown.
Well, if it's a stock guitar, he doesn't really need to bring it in unless there's something really unique about it, because we know what a 54 Strat is. We know what the specs are. But with a lot of guitars, they've been
like the Blackie. You're talking about like Blackie and Brownie, stuff like that.
I mean, like when we do a run of something. Well, the first thing to do is to see it in person.
Right.
Make notes of all the things that are interesting that you find. Some things like with the Blackie, it's just like, oh boy, how'd that happen? How much, you got to kind of reverse engineer the damage. How did that happen? Well, the thing with that neck is like everybody knew it was sloppy in the neck pocket, and the high E string fell off the side. Why? Well, because it had been refinished, and that's why the neck was thin. And that's why there was dirt underneath the paint job, because they didn't sand all the dirt off, and then they painted over it. So to duplicate that, before we painted the neck, we put the dirt on there and then painted the neck so that the dirt would be underneath the finish. And then that also explained why there was so much wear on the fingerboard, because when they repaired it, they didn't put very much paint on it. So there's all these little things that you make notes of, and you've got to figure out how to do. We take scads of pictures and videos, because stuff doesn't show up in pictures, but it might show up in video. So you got to kind of cross-check and do everything. And one of the things I've learned from doing that is, like, I get to put the prototype together with the real deal before it's revealed, because even with all of that, there's still things that you don't see unless you're looking at it. And it's like, this, so then I'll make notes on this needs to be corrected, this needs to be corrected. Do another prototype, and then that's the one that goes off for final approval. And that whole process, in the case of the Brownie, just figuring out how to do these 3 knobs and figuring out how to do the cracks in the pickguard, that was like a week's, 40 hours worth of work. And that, not even making them yet, it's just figuring out how I'm going to do it and how I'm going to get the results that I want to get. There was little cracks on the knobs and stuff. Those all had to be drawn on there, and everything had to be duplicated, and all the little notches and the crack here between the screw and the end. How do I put a crack there without actually putting a crack there, but it's got to look like a crack, and it's got to be kind of offset. So I had to carve with a carving knife, carve this little crack, but then carve it askew so that it looked like it was spread, and just a lot of little things like that. And sometimes you get surprised, but it's like, wow, that came out really cool. And there's other times where it's just like, I can't get it, And
is that where the interaction comes in between the other builders, Jackson guys? You're looking for something.
Well, every time we do one of those runs, everybody learns from it. It's like, how'd you do that? It's like, I did this. And it's like, I think I'll use that on something, but not in quite the same way. I mean, I really like the wear that's on the Brownies and the Blackie. That's why when I do a lot of relics, I mean, I tend to gravitate towards that. It's a lot of work. It gives me blisters, but I can't not do it because I like it so much.
The other builders critique it?
From this angle,
Do they critique your prototype and constructively to say, hey, this is dead on, or you need to do this?
Well, no, it's not like that. It's actually more vicious. It's just like, oh, geez,
What were you thinking?
what an idiot.
Well, just to give you guys an idea.
We don't. It's if I'm having a problem doing something, I'll ask around. I was like, hey, have you ever done? What do you think about? But most of them, 99% of the time, whatever schemes we concoct work. And then later on, you'll figure out, oh, wait a minute, if I do it this way, same results, but it's easier,
Well, Todd, on Brownie, you matched the case as well, too, right?
Yeah, we did. Well, except for a couple of things, because the historical case was a crummy case. So, it had no padding in it. The guitar was sloshing around, and it was a fragile case. So when I contacted G&G, he says, well, he brought that up. He says, do you want the original case? Because that was a piece of crap, I said, no, what I want is the modern case with the modern padding, but I want the lining to be the same, so visually it's actually, I think, 2 inches longer and an inch wider than the original case, because there's all that padding that goes around the sides now to keep it from doing this. But we relicked all the hardware for the cases, so it's kind of dingy, and then painted the cream logo on it.
Talk about the approval process with Eric. So you get the protos done. What's the next step after that?
Send it to Eric. That's the scary part. And then it's like, we'll get back to you, and it's just like 4 days later, because of the time difference, it's 4 days later, there's no word, and it's just like,
The wait.
And then you'll get like, well, here's the video, and Eric's talking about it, and this and that, and it's just like, so I guess that's yes,
Has anybody ever come back to you with modifications? And
yeah. There was some on the first Blackie actually on the David Gilmour. The David Gilmour is a better sample because they kept changing their mind as to what it was going to be every time I built a prototype. Well, we're already that far. Why don't we just add this? Okay. Or because it wasn't supposed to be an exact replica. It was supposed to be a closet classic that kind of looked like David's. And then it turned into a team-built exact replica. And that was just by them finagling. It's like, well, you've come this far. If you add this and this, you've got it knocked. So then I would do that. They'd go, well, yeah, like that. And I said this. It's like, no, you didn't say that. So they very cleverly led me into doing the guitar differently, and there was a lot of back and forth. I built several prototypes, but when it was right, and I loved it. And it's probably one of our biggest selling.
Absolutely,
yeah.
We make a lot of those.
Is it really?
yeah.
So it was like a 3-year process, approximately, wasn't it? From the beginning discussions to
I would say at least 2.5, if not 2. Trips to London and back, and I mean that was the fun part. Was going into David's warehouse and seeing all of his stuff. That took a day. Hey, do you have that amp from Dark Side of the Moon? Yeah, it's right over here. Takes it out. You want to play it? It's just every piece of equipment he's ever owned is in that warehouse, put away neatly in some sort of thing. All his pedal boards. Hey, do you remember that neck we made in Charville? Remember? Opens up a cabinet. It's right here. And here's the pickup we got from Dan Smith back in 1986. And it just, and then we got to go. Took a tour of Astoria, which is the studio that's on the old 1920s houseboat. And that, we spent several hours in there just being blown away by every bit of that houseboat is used for something. You go into the kitchen, you open the drawers. Well, here's a drawer of distortion pedals. Here's a drawer of chords. And they're all in there like a well-organized tackle box. The whole kitchen, all the cabinets and stuff. And then the master bedroom in the back is the actual studio itself. one of the restrooms was converted into where the tape machines are. And it's a really, there's a book out that has, you know, Phil Taylor actually did end up doing a book about it, or somebody did.
Did you work with Wayne Shepard?
Yeah. Kenny's one of my favorite artists. Very easy to work with. He's a really nice guy. He's a great player, you know.
I ran into him in Chicago just before his guitar came out, and he was so thrilled about that.
Yeah, I just did that orange Strat for him that he's been using on the Hendrix thing. He wanted the loudest orange Strat. He says, we're going to be all in black, and it's going to be the only color on stage. I just want it to be bright orange, which, you know, anybody that knows me, orange is my favorite color. So this guy's, orange is Kenny's favorite color too. So right at that point, it was like, you know, you got to make it orange. It's like, it's done. I got the perfect orange for it. You know, it's like, I've already got it picked out, you know. And then as I'm building, I'm thinking, it's like, man, this, you know, orange sparkle would be cool, but, you know, that might be too much, man. Maybe should I mention that? You know, I don't want it to be too loud, then he's not going to want to play it. And I get this email, like, the next day. It's like, hey, is there any way I can get orange metal flake? You know, and it's just like, yeah. they were both on the same thinking. Did an orange mirrored pickguard on top of the orange, and it's just, it looks like it's on fire when it's on stage.
He's a hot rod guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Anything else? You want to see the inside of this?
Yeah.
So let's talk. Tell him what you're going to do before you do it here. And he's going to do it all using just the Krause toolkit, correct?
Yes. The reason I wanted to take this guitar apart is some of the selling features of this guitar, other than its beauty, are what's inside. And there's been a lot of questions about what I call a shielded configuration, or I haven't come up with the best way to explain this in a sentence. You know, a vintage modification, a noiseless modification, a classic rock modification. So what I'm going to do is open it up for you and show you what that is. Using the Krause toolkit, or the Custom Shop toolkit. So that's what it really is. Krause is the company that makes them. They started out making. No. They made tool bags for Harley Davidsons and motorcycles. You know, each specific for that model. So if you had a vintage, you know, Harley Davidson, it was one bag of tools, you know, wrenches. So if you broke down, you could fix your bike. That's where the Krause comes from, is, you know.
When it broke down.
When it broke down.
When you're at the shop, you use an electric screwdriver?
Yes.
You got one.
Sometimes during assembly, though, I am kind of quirky about the pickguard screws. I do use a hand screwdriver to put them in. I might drive them down close, you know, and then finish them up, because it's real easy to go too far.
Crack it.
Yeah, you don't crack it, you strip the hole out. The other thing, too, is on the single ply guards, if you tighten the screw too much, it actually will pull the pickguard kind of out of shape. It can. And once you've done that, even if you've loosened the screw, the damage is done.
Has there been any change in the pickguard material in like the last 10 years or so?
Not that we're aware of. I mean, the company that supplies it swears up and down it's the same stuff, and it is nitro. I mean, you can smell it, and it'll if you put a match to it, it will ignite. You ever put a match to a pick, to a nitro pick?
We got all night though.
Take a thin pick and light it on fire. Get ready to let go of it, because it'll be gone in a second. I mean, it burns fast.
Wow.
Ping pong balls are the worst. You know, they're just. I actually saw a guy at Jackson. His name was Kenny McCutcheon. and Grover had brought back this little teeny belt sander that was handheld, because they used to take a file and file the binding in between the frets on those necks, and it was a long process. Grover came back from Germany with this little grinder. He's like, this will speed things up and production will be great. And so Kenny's filing it, and all of a sudden it lit on fire and it burned around like a wick. Like a fuse. Kenny McCutcheon looked like Yosemite Sam, you know.
Do you guys put wax or anything on the screws? I've heard of people.
I do on the neck screws, and I think that's about it. I use soap.
You soap?
Yeah.
Like bar soap?
Yeah.
Ivory.
Ivory soap. It's got to be fresh, too. Once that bar's been out for a couple of days, it gets hard. You know, in the early days of the shop, we ordered a bunch of soap, balloons, coffee, and cigarettes. And somebody came over to the shop and said, we're not going to fund your party. It's like, these are for relicking. The coffee, you know, for the cigarettes, for the, you know, they would put the cigarette in there and let it burn. But
you actually use a real cigarette to relic it? Like if you buy like a road worn, it's an actual cigarette that was used to burn that in?
Up here?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had builders that would just keep stuffing cigarettes in there. Like, it takes more than one. You got to do several. Like John English, you know, and then he'd smoke one for himself, stick two in there, smoke another one himself, stick another one in there, you know. But we don't do that so much anymore. We've found other ways to achieve the same. Because the guitars that are burned up here, it's not just... The cigarette will just burn the lacquer. It takes several cigarettes to actually burn the wood. There's got to be a little bit of charcoal in the maple, too. See, but this is carbon conductive paint. It conducts electricity, so it's grounded here and here by this plate, foil, which is grounded through the wire to the jack. So there's a whole cloud of ground around all the electronics. And then on top of that, if you could see into the pickups here, you see this extra green wire? Okay, what there is you have your copper coils, and then there's a piece of tape, of cloth tape that's put around those to protect them. And then there's a piece of copper tape that goes around, and then that is grounded. That goes straight to the ground here. So now there's a ground field around those coils, so there's no electricity, no light, no 60 cycle energy getting into the pickup at that point either. So, but what that does is that is like actually adding winds to the pickup. So it makes the pickups a little bit hotter, which makes them a little bit darker or warmer. Which I like on the 50s pickups because they are a little bit chimey, and that kind of just knocks the edge off a little bit. But there's a lot of guitars that were on the road in the late 60s and 70s where this modification was done to it to reduce the 60 cycle hum. As the stages got bigger and there was more electricity on stage, it became a bigger and bigger problem. So in the process of taking apart guitars to replicate them, this was something that we saw over and over and over again. And when I got a chance to spec out a guitar, it was like, I want to use that because it's cool. It's a vintage modification. I mean, I like Noise's pickups. It changes the tone of the pickups. When you have all that 60 cycle hum, and especially if you're using distortion, you've got kind of a hiss with a growl. And when you stop playing, you hear the hiss, but then you start playing and one kind of covers the other one up, but it doesn't really cover it up. It's just kind of with it. When you remove that hiss, you get a truer tone. So that's how it changes the tone, is you hear more of it. It doesn't change the tone to another tone. It just gives it more clarity. And I really like that. And I thought, when you're doing a vintage relic replication, what better of a way to put in some of that voodoo of days gone by, that secret sauce that, I love this. This is I think this is a really neat modification. I think on this particular guitar, these are fat 50s, so they're a little bit fatter because of the modification. There's a more clarity to the sound that you're getting out of them because of the shielding. It's hard to explain that without seeing it,
Are those pickups machine wound or hand wound?
I don't remember what I did on this.
Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't.
Yeah, I want to say that I'm pretty sure these are machine wound because I really wanted that to authenticate the process. I didn't want any of this to be, it's because they're hand wound. It's like, no, they're machine wound. It's the but I do also do hand wound ones with the same treatment done to them too.
They sound different?
It's not a lot different. It's different in the fact that you don't have the hiss in with the sound, or as much. It's not perfect. If you want perfect, you have to get the actual noiseless pickups that we make, the modern noiseless. Those have no 60 cycle hum.
Yeah. So again, what kind of paint is that again?
It's carbon conductive. Lead paint, maybe? I don't know. It's water based, so it's kind of temperamental. It takes a little bit of. You can't just paint the cavity once because it will separate. It kind of comes off. It doesn't want to stick to the lacquer. But as it dries, it gets thick. So you got to keep working it till it's spread out. And it's messy if you get it on yourself. It doesn't clean off real easy, which is weird because it's water-based. It should rinse off, but it don't.
When you take apart old pickups, do a large percentage of those pickups have defects or problems or just normal aging, or are the ones that survive till today usually like the cream of the crop, and that's why they're still around today?
That's a good question. It depends on the exposure of the guitar. If it's hanging on the wall in the hard rock and it's getting all kinds of moisture all over it, there's bound to be some kind of crud that's going to build up on those coils underneath. Having said that, you got musicians playing it, they're sweating on them. They're pretty durable. I mean, it's pretty rare that I get a guitar or bass back and it's got a dead coil. And I would say out of 70% of those, they were able to be repaired. In other words, the part of the wire that broke was on the top, so it was just a matter of unwinding one wind and then reapplying it and soldering it.
Deep in the wind where it
Right. Now, if the ground side breaks, because it goes from the ground all the way around and then into the positive, then you're screwed because you got to take all the wire off to get to that point. I had a pickup for it'll come to me, but I asked Abby, can you fix this? She goes, no, it's broke too deep. So she started unwinding it, but after she got about 10 turns off, she found where it was broke, and then she was able to fix it, which was I think it was one of Kenny Wayne's guitars. One of his he got a new hardtail 59, and the headstock had warped just awfully bad, but the neck was straight, so I redressed it for him, and it had that dead pickup. She was able to fix it. So he got that guitar for really a lot less money than it was worth, because the way the headstock was warped, it looked like the whole neck was no good, but it just turned out it was just the headstock and the dead pickup.
Do you repair a lot of vintage guitars at a custom shop, or just build the new custom?
We really don't do that. I mean, in the case of Kenny Wayne, he sent it in the shop, and I was like, hell yeah, I'll do it, but it's not part of my job. That's not what I do. It's got to kind of be fit into, after hours or, something along those lines. Very few. I restored a guitar for Tony Garnier, who's a bass player for Bob Dylan. He had a bass 6 that he had got and then had repainted to a honeyburst urethane, and then realized years later that he shouldn't have done that, and I stripped it and painted it Olympic white, reliced it. once again, it's one of those things. It's like we can't do this in the custom shop because it contaminates. Hey, where'd that real, vintage key go? I don't know. Maybe it's over there in the pile of the new relic ones. But occasionally something pops up to where it's like, yeah, I'll do it. But it's scary. Working on a vintage guitar. If you screw it up, what are you going to do? I dropped acetone on your 52 Tele-Am. Sorry, I ruined the finish. There's a liability issue too, Most of the ones that I'm willing to touch are already broken. I got a neck from somebody once. It was black. It had been in a house fire. And he goes, well, it's not burned too bad. He says, you might be able to strip it. I go, well, send it in. I'll take a look at it. Well, it turns out it was a 63. So, and it had been refretted. So it had the urethane finish and then had been touched up with lacquer. So the lacquer burned. So when I put acetone on it to strip, it just stripped off that lacquer finish, and what was underneath it was the perfect 63 neck with all the wear on it, all the original. It was like done.
Wow. Can you talk a bit about the 69 pickups? If I understand, unless you order them that way, they're not reverse wound, so you don't get the hum in the 2 and 4 positions. Am I correct?
Correct. That is actually a more of a modern thing. Even when people started putting 5-ways in guitars with they weren't reverse wound, reverse polarized, and that works too. It does give you a slight, the only way, for lack of a better way to explain it, like out of phase kind of sound, but it's not out of phase. Out of phase would be a lot worse.
Right.
But that's the only way I can explain it is the out of phase. Whereas with the reverse wound, you don't get the out of phase, but what you get is when those two go together humbucking, the level drops. Just like on a jazz bass, when you roll up both pickups, the level drops. Because that's the way they work with each other. And they kind of steal power from each other in that hum-canceling way. So some people find that annoying. The tone is cooler. It's more like a humbucker or, and it's noise canceled. But the level drops. And then other people don't like it the other way because it sounds too much like it's out of phase. It just depends on what style you're playing and what you're going to do with it. But anyway, you look at it, the 5-way's cool, because it gives you the extra 2 options.
What year did they start with 5-ways? Was it the 70s?
Yeah, I would say 70s at some point. Or maybe it was the 80s. I think that was something that came along way late. They were probably like hot rod shops were doing it probably in the 70s, but Fender officially, I think I want to say it was like 83 something.
1976.
Was it 76? There you go. That was the only thing they did right in 76.
Do the 70s guitars really have as bad a reputation as we always hear about?
They do have a bad reputation, but I've picked a few up that were pretty stellar, but it was pretty much hit or miss back then. A lot of the complaints in the 70s was like, yeah, I bought a Fender Strat, now I got to find a guy to make it right, refret it, dress the frets, set it up. Whereas nowadays, when you get the guitar, it should be ready to go.
Was it just poor quality control or just unskilled workforce? Or?
Not so much quality control as it was profit driven by higher ups. So it's like, no, you don't need to do that. Just do this, get it out the door.
Like inferior materials, just quick and dirty.
Quick and dirty. It was all about the profits, cutting corners, getting it out.
Quantity.
Ship it. And, they did those. They did that one guitar. I forgot what it's called, but it was actually a 12-string, and they had a bunch of parts for 12 strings, but the 12 strings weren't selling, so they plugged up the holes.
Marauder.
Is it the Marauder?
It was the Custom.
The custom, they plugged up the holes. So you have the 12-string headstock, but there's only 6 holes in it.
Oh, jeez.
Right? And then later on, as the guitars got old, you could see the big block that was in the string holes and the string holes in the headstock and stuff like that. That's not acceptable, but that's the kind of thing they were doing back then. How is CBS? How can we get more money out of this?
When did that change?
1985.
When did it sell? Yeah, when 85. Schultz from the investment group bought it in 85.
Yeah, 1985.
So would you say if you're looking at a vintage Strat, you'd say don't look at anything before 85, or just be careful with it?
Well, anything after 64 is when CBS bought it. Up until 85, check it over. I mean, there's still good guitars out there in those years. You know, a lot of people's like, oh, 3-bolt neck, that's crap. You know, it's just like, well, some of them weren't. You know, a lot of them weren't. It's a good system. A lot of hits that were recorded were done on those crappy guitars. So it's not like they were just unplayable. They just weren't what they were beforehand. And a lot of that, you know, came from, well, why do you got to dress the frets? They're all the same size. Just string them up, you know. People were running the company that didn't know anything about the guitars, you know, but they were getting flogged for profit returns. And then when that didn't work anymore, CBS sold it for way less than they paid for it, I think.
What did they do with all this stuff from the original, you know, the factory in Fullerton?
We still have some of
Did
it.
you guys keep that stuff to like use as templates and patterns?
We use a lot of the tooling, original tooling for bridge blocks, for the saddles, pickguard press.
So you've got all that 60s?
We've got a lot of it, yeah. It's cool when you look at it, you can see the date on it, you know, something from 59 or 1966.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. It's the, you know, the mojo from all those instruments, right? We still use that stuff in the custom shop. So the bridge block on that guitar was made using the same tooling as what Buddy Holly could have used, as what, you know, Hendrix used. So it's really cool. It's a trip to think about.
Well, one of the things that Dennis pointed out was, if you look at we use the same stamp for the telebridges as they used back then. And if you look at the size of just like a bullet has forensic marks on it, you look at the tele bridges we stamp out now and compare it to an old vintage bridge, and the rifling marks are in the same spot.
What's the biggest difference a manufacturing development or new technology is made in how you build a Strat that's really been built for so many
Consistency. The more sophisticated some of our tooling gets, the more consistent, the more accurately we can do things. I mean, I know that sounds kind of weird because it was like, well, you work with your hands. I mean, that's almost like the John Henry versus the steam engine. But at some point, it's like, no, that's better. Not because we're lazy. It's just some of the machines we use are really, really, really accurate. I mean, and it's consistent. If you want the neck pocket and the neck to fit, you know, if somebody does that by hand, there's going to be more variation just because the way you put the wood through the machine. But when it's done on a CNC, it's the same every time.
So would you say, I mean, if you ever looked at that old Fender video online where you see the guy in the factory with the cigar hanging out with his shirt off, and
oh yeah,
he's just like rounded by hand, he throws it.
Charvel.
Yeah. I mean, you know, wouldn't there be some guitars that really didn't turn out so great?
Yeah,
the really good ones survived.
They're all a little different. But here's the thing: we do have the machines, right? They cut the bodies, they cut the necks, they do it tight. You know, the neck and body, they're married from the get-go. But all the contours you see, everything is hand sanded. They have sanding machines, but everything is still done by hand. The neck, the back shape.
The one comment you'll see on pictures of the tour or videos of the tour is people will always post it's like, wow, I had no idea there was so much handwork.
Just in the custom shop, or even for like the
factory in general, even more so in the custom shop.
But the custom shop is all, I mean, everything. I've been there for 14 years, and every time I go back, I'm watching them do this. It's, you know, they're having conversations and they're doing it, and it's perfect. You these guys, we talk about recipe. They have the secret recipe. They know how to do it. The exact.
The guy with the shirt off, it's because there was no air conditioning. It was probably 120 inside the
One
factory.
guy's just like spraying nitrocellulose.
With the cigar.
Yeah, he just,
Yeah.
no got one nothing. He's got a little thing he's spinning.
Thanks. Well, we had a painter. Not only did they not wear masks, but they thought, I'm a painter, I get a free buzz every day. That's great. I mean, there was no OSHA rules, and he worked up until he died, but he was definitely brain damaged, and he worked, they had him doing, odd jobs around the shop, moving stuff around and stuff, but he was definitely a casualty of the 60s,
I mean, now it's done. It's so safe. I mean, when the air leaves the factory, it's cleaner than it was coming in. Burn it all out.
Yeah, and then we ship all the crud that gets taken out to another state, and they pour it into a hole.
Do you recycle any of the leftover wood? Do you do anything with all that wood that's left over?
We do. Well, we don't. Somebody else does. Somebody buys that from us. All what we call body roaches. It's after they cut out the body, it's the remaining scrap. All of that goes into a dumpster, and there's this company that comes and picks it up, and they make I don't know if it's Presto logs or if they turn it into hamster cage liner or alder. To me always reminds me of a horse stable, because that sawdust that they put in the horse stable, that's usually alder.
Well, they started using some of the cutouts for picture frames. They started utilizing. You ever seen that? It's actually pretty cool.
It was one of those things where somebody goes, if we could just figure out a product to make out of those,
Got picture frame quality control issues to do.
That's okay.
Well, what it is it's a souvenir that you can get
At the tour.
at the tour,
yeah.
And it's basically a picture frame, and you can put whatever in there, I guess, or you would think it'd be a picture of the factory, or
You have a shop, Mark has where the quality control failure, the wood that's not good enough goes to there, and then you can buy a kit guitar or you can buy souvenirs. Do you have a shop like that?
Yeah, we don't. If it's not good enough, we either scrap it or rework it until it is good enough.
we get people ask me all the time, it's like, can I come in and buy a second? It's like, we don't have seconds.
Right.
And they look at me like, why not? What if you did come in and buy a second, right? And then 5 years from now you decide, it's like, man, I got to unload this. Okay, is there any paperwork that says this is a second? So now it's out there floating around as our best work.
It reduces the integrity of the brand. That's what we fight every day. You have to maintain that integrity. I mean, this is a custom shop. I mean, this dude right here, he's Todd. We love him, but he's an artist. This is one of the elite guitar builders in the world. And
so the brand integrity, the thing that always confused me, Fender has such amazing, innovative designs that have been around for 60 years. The Fender body, the Telly body, the P-bass, the J-bass, and I see a million knockoffs of this stuff.
yeah.
How come Fender wasn't able to protect the shape of those guitars, and even the headstocks are so close on some of these knockoffs that I can't believe it's not a patent or infringement.
Yeah, it's not. I really can't comment.
Judge didn't like us.
Yeah,
Really?
The headstocks.
The headstocks are the
But the body shape, I mean, look at the knockoffs. The body shapes are the same body shapes, the same cutaways, the same.
Now let me ask you this: if you started your own guitar company, wouldn't you just make your own guitar? What is the?
Right?
Because what they charge for those guitars are often the same, if not more, than you can buy a real Fender for.
Right.
And it's like, well, yeah, but it's my version of the Telly. Well, why is your version? And what I find with a lot of these people is they've come up with these excuses as to why their guitar is better. And it's always an insult, because it's like, well, I do it the way it used to be when Fender was good. Now they suck.
Right.
That's
over and over. Go to a guitar show and ask these guys, and they'll say the same thing.
Yeah,
over
but
and over.
when you drive this off a lot, it still has its value. When you drive that up a lot, see it, bud. Your investment is.
Yeah, the resale on one of those is a little bit different than a Fender.
But I'm just floored by how many times I've seen the Strat, the P-bass shape on another instrument.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is such a ripoff of a brand.
A lot of them
It hasn't happened yet. That doesn't mean it won't happen in the future. It's just the way that things are right now. Hopefully, can you imagine what that would be like if we did trademark the body?
I've had some recent experience with the headstock trademark issue, and I will tell you that there is a certain French curve that when you're on one side of it, it's legal. When you're on the other side of it, you got to change your headstock. So when you see a G&L headstock, you see it's got a little drop to it. When you see a PV headstock, you see it doesn't have this ball end up at the top. Kind of goes straight. They are just taking it right up to that point in the French curve where they're 1 degree off, and if they cross over that line, that's when the attorneys get involved.
Yeah.
Usually doesn't go to that, though. It's just one little letter. Stop doing that.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. The jig's up.
That's right.
When I worked at Jackson, we used to do this headstock. The Charvels had the Strat headstock.
We're still doing it on a Bill Collin.
And one day Grover called everybody in a meeting. He says, we just got a letter from Fender. We can't use the headstock anymore. And he says, they let the last container through, but they said they'll burn the next one. He goes, so what we're going to do is we're going to come up with another headstock. And everybody goes, well, we all like that one, which was the Randy Rhoads headstock. And that's how that kind of came about was, why? This one here is cool. So all the Jacksons and Charvels from that point had that, which was weird because after we did that, everybody kind of came up with a similar pointy headstock. Well, Kramer did their hockey stick thing, and then Ibanez did kind of a similar thing, and everybody's so fixated on we got to have that pointy headstock. It's like, well, it's the rest of the guitar too,
Hey, you can't copy me. I was copying you.
Yeah. Well, even like transitioning, I had this conversation with Dave Brown. He goes, you can paint a Charvel the same color as a Fender. He says it still looks like a Charvel, and vice versa. It's the techniques they used to sand them. It's hard to explain, but that's part of the look, and it shows up. Is the size of the radius, how it's sanded. Like on the Fenders, this edge here isn't exactly flat because they use a bag sander, and it kind of rounds it, gives it this really cool vintage round thing. Charvels are flat. They use a cutter and then they block it. Spindle sander with a hard thing. So their process is different. And even if they're both painted the same color, I can tell you which is which because they look completely different, even though they're the same shape. So when you work at Charvel and Jackson, and that's where you learn how to sand, and then you come to Fender and you think you know how to sand, it's just like there, it's sanded. It's like, but now it doesn't look like a Fender. It looks like a Jackson. So I had to relearn how to sand it to make it look like a Fender.
Does Custom Shop make majority of guitars or basses too?
It's majority of guitars. It goes in the order of this: Strat, Tele, P-bass, jazz bass. There's more guitar players than bass players. Back up. Somebody brought in a 72 Tele and asked for a new neck.
Okay.
So there was this 72 Tele neck. Old CBS had really crappy frets on it. It was wore out. And when we moved the shop, it was in the dumpster. And I thought, there you go, that's a 3-bolt. Nobody's going to want that. I said, well, give it to me. So I had it rat-holed for a long time, and then one day I pulled it out, and I was showing it to Mike, and I decided to refret it, and it was just like, now it's a good neck. There was nothing wrong with it. And that was the inspiration for this, is I actually have in the shop a 72 Tele neck that I was going to put this body on. This was the vision I had. And this is how it's wore out. It's just got a little bit off here. It's dented up. It's a poly finish. This is urethane. It's thinner, but it gets the same results. You see the difference in the headstock and this. So this year, when I was approached, I said I could do whatever I wanted for this dealer show that we were having. This is what I did. This was the guitar that I wanted to build for myself. It's based on some stuff I did with Johnny Lang. So it has the Seth Lever humbuckers and the P90 in the middle, and the black pickguard with this is the same color that the Lenny was, the SRV's guitar, and I just really liked the way that looked like with black and maple. And I also decided, so I put the same SRV saddles on it. These were the same aftermarket saddles that were on the Lenny guitar. So the whole purpose of this was to look like an old guitar that had been modified, had a few tricks and bells and whistles on it. The jack's been redone. And it's got this weird wiring that I don't know if it's any different than the way we normally wire a Tele, but Johnny Lang's Tele was wired really oddly. This is reverse wound, reverse polarity, and the way it goes through the signal path is odd. But I wired this up the same way, just to get that tone. As far as the good guitars or the bad guitars of the 70s, it's like, well, it's a great design. I mean, this one is done with a little bit more attention to detail than they were in the 70s. The neck actually fits here; it's snug here, but this is, this cavity where it's routed out comes all the way up to here. It's not just underneath the upper.
Okay.
It's all the way, this whole half, and then this has, this gone, and then there's a channel that comes up along here. So there's a significant amount. It's the thing with weight relief is if you have a really heavy spread and you do that, it loses a lot of weight because each square inch weighs a lot.
Okay.
But if you have a light piece of wood and you do all that, it's not much lighter because what you cut out didn't weigh anything. It's really kind of. I did an experiment with Red Dave once. I did a run of set neck and they were hollow. And I wanted to see how much weight was taken off, so we marked all the spreads as what they weighed before, and they all lost. They all kind of averaged out. But that's one thing I noticed is the heavier ones lost the most weight, the lighter ones lost the less weight, and they kind of met somewhere in the middle. And this was a hard one for me to give up. Even when it was done, it sat around in my area for 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Mike played it quite a bit. This is a really neat guitar. It's something I did, just based on stuff that I've done in the past. But somebody here brought up the 72 or 70s. This is a 72, based loosely on a 72.
Yeah.
And then I also wanted to this here. This is a team built guitar, but it's done to my specs. I built the prototype, and then I went back and taught them how to build this guitar. The reason I'm pulling this down is because this is kind of a team-built version of that guitar. There's not a whole lot of difference between these two spec-wise, other than this is a custom color. It has the shielded pickups. These, I think, are hand-wound Fat 50s with the shielding. I did the gold hardware. It's not rusted, but it's worn. I did that because there's the green has kind of a gold base coat to it. It just kind of worked. And there's not a lot of wear on it. There's the fingerboard wear, back of the neck wear, but you notice that there's not a lot of the paint removed. But it's really beat up. So we still have the texture, but we've covered all the wood. It's headstock adjust. I did this because a lot of people I talk to is like, man, my neck keeps moving. What do I do about my neck stability? It's just like, well, stop messing with it. Leave it tuned. A lot of people think that you have to untune the guitar when you're not playing it. Well, all that does is that's like readjusting your truss rod. Then you tune it back up. So just leave it in tune. But just in case, I did this just to make it, because my neck's moved, but I know that they're going to go back the next day. And where I live in Riverside, you go from 100% humidity to 0% overnight. The Santa Ana's blowing. And I can almost tell, it's like a barometer. If I pick up my guitar and all the notes are sharp, well, it's dry because the neck's moved back this way. And then when it starts raining, all the notes go flat because the neck moved that way. So what I did on this is I didn't remove a whole lot of paint from the neck. It's a one piece, so you don't have the maple changing at a different rate as the rosewood, and the rosewood being exposed to moisture or lack of moisture. So that was the method behind the design of this neck. But it's a 1056 shape, similar to that. It's funny that these have a lot of the same specs, because that's what I really like right now. So, hey, we want you to build a guitar that you would build for yourself right now. Well, this is it, And this is kind of a custom color I came up with. It's not a real vintage color, but it looks like it could have been. Maybe like a Ford green of some sort, vintage green.
Yeah, that old LTD.
Yeah, or station wagon. Yeah.
It was black trim and that green.
So I pulled this down because this is a team-built guitar, limited edition, designed by me, which is real similar to the one that I had apart up here earlier. I've done a few of these for Frank at Music Gallery. This is kind of a play on the George Fullerton did a prototype of a Strat that had a chrome plate like this, but the volume and tone knobs were in a straight line, changing the anodization on the plates. Maybe they don't all need to be black. Maybe a silver plate, maybe a chrome plate, maybe a gold plate, just depending on what color, what works with the guitar. So I've had a lot of fun with this. This one is actually two pieces. It's the pick guard and the plate. On the ones that I'm making now, I just put the plate on top of the pick guard. So that gives the player an option. I can leave the plate on or I can take it off because there's pick guard underneath it. And it gives me more latitude as far as what colors I can use, what two things I can, match up or take on and put off. But it's basically a 50s Strat, two-piece pick guard. I think these are Fat 50s pickups. It's a five-way. Yeah, this one has an ash body. Some of them will have alder. Once again, there's the Blackie pick guard wear. Not exactly, but there's something about the way that feels and looks. Just you can tell I like the brown, huh? And I told you all my favorite color was orange, but there's this is like the illusion of the refinished guitar, or that period in the 60s where everybody was stripping their guitar and putting varnish on it. Lenny's a good example of a guitar that happened to. But as I said earlier, this just looks like something that Johnny Winter would play. Just that whole era. And this is a custom color. This is something, once again, me and Frank came up. It was mostly Frank. He was just like, I want that vintage, refinished, varnished guitar kind of, And we did the tortoise pick guard. But this is, to me, when I see stuff like this is like, this stands out because this doesn't exist in huge quantities. It's like when a color is pulled out of the spectrum and you don't see it for a long time, and then all of a sudden it pops up. It's like, wow, Same as with the Clapton 7-Up green or some of those other colors that kind of come in and out of. Gumby green was real popular for a while. Pink, that color refuses to go away.
Yeah. Do you do a lot of Claptons in candy green or 7-Up green?
Not a lot, no, but it is. Yeah, I can. It's. I would say it's less than 10. Within the last recent history. Usually when I do, the dealer will have ordered one of each color.
So you do the pewter.
Pewter, the 7-Up green, the Ferrari red, the Olympic white, Mercedes blue and black. Mercedes and gold leaf.
Yeah.
Which ones are off limits?
Daphne blue and Ferrari gray. Maybe once again, if he does a color that people start taking a shine to, we'll talk about doing a limited run of those.
So let's say he orders a Clapton Strat from you. It'll be built to the same specs as whatever you're building Eric's to.
Yeah.
Correct?
Regardless, here's how it works with the Master Build. If Eric decides, hey, make me a guitar with a three-way switch, and then the next guitar is like, yeah, I want the three-way switch again. Guess what? When you order a guitar, you're going to go, why did I get a three-way switch? It's like, because that's what Eric's using right now. On a team build, it's more of a slower change. If Eric sticks with it long enough, well, then the team built version will change. And the PL10, the line version, I don't think that's changed in 15 years. I mean, that should be changed, but because he's not using that neck shape, he's not using those, not using the TBX, not using those, a lot of parts on there that are, but that contract is a different contract than the custom shop, and it's never been rewritten, and it should be updated if you ask me.
Can you comment on quarter saw necks versus flat saw necks? I've got an Eric Johnson Strat that I know has, quarter saw neck, but does it marry better with ash or alder, and why would I want one or the other? I like it or I don't like it, but
I know, and as soon as we leave the room, somebody else is going to go, no, it sounds different. But that's not why I use it. It's the direction it warps. Ultimately, is what makes it important. People think quarter sawn, the grain is on the end. It's stronger. It's not stronger. It warps differently. Well, yeah, but my neck doesn't warp. It's like, it wants to curve this way instead of this way. It wants to go this way. And if you've got a quarter sawn with a board on it, now it's kind of locked into place. But when they go bad, they go really bad. You get the twisted, because they're all warped in different ways. Whereas a flat sawn, it's going to either warp this way or that way. It can usually be adjusted with the truss rod. It's not so much a sound thing. I like the quarter sawn because of the appearance, the long straight grain. It's a cleaner look. Once again, it wants to warp kind of at a slightly different angle. On necks that are one piece, it's stabler than, say, a flat sawn, and it's just an illusion because it's once again, it's not warping this way. It's kind of trying to go sideways, but because of the way it's shaped, it's not easy for it to do that.
So would you say a quarter saw neck wouldn't need to be adjusted with the truss as often?
Possibly. It depends on whether it's got a board or no board, because now you've got two different kinds of woods expanding and contracting at different rates. Whether that makes it stronger, I don't know. I've never done that test, but it's the thought of being stabler. I have nothing to back that evidence up, though, other than my own guitars. And they all warp it a little bit, like I said, and I can tell by when I play them, it's sharp today, Retune it, the next day you pick it up, now it's flat,
Well, I know that when you build for Eric and Jeff, for example, you almost always use riff cut maple. Is that an appearance thing that's preferable to you, or? It's
an appearance, and I mean, sometimes what looks right, that's what people want. And the long straight grain lines, a lot of people see that and think, oh, that's a stiff neck. I don't know of any kind of way of measuring whether it is or not, because you can take two necks and put weights on them and measure but they're two different pieces of wood.
Right.
So the only like quarter sawn, you can cut a 1x1 tube of maple and put it flat sawn, hang weights on it, measure how much it bends, and then turn it sideways and put the same weight on it. At least you're using the same amount of wood. When I've done that, it's the same amount of strength. So that's just what led me to believe it's not that it's stronger, it's that it's warping in a different direction.
So you're saying if I were to pick one or the other,
it's not going to ruin your sound. It's just going to be
appearance or.
Sure, why not? That's how you pick girls, right?
You're right. And then flame maple, is that flat sawn? When you've got a flame in it, I mean, is it one way or another?
Yes. Quarter sawn flame doesn't look very flamey, and it's not very attractive. And I used to get a lot of requests for, like, I'll show you, I'm not only going to get AAA flame, but I'm going to get quarter sawn AAA flame, and it's going to be watered with unicorn tears. But it's not a good looking piece of wood. The best looking flame is flat sawn.
Yeah.
You can also go with riff cut. What's cool about that, whether is when you're looking at the neck one way, this side is heavy, and then you flip the neck over, and now this side is heavy because it refracts differently. With the flat sawn, it's a little bit more consistent. My personal favorite is what we call a ghost flame, where you didn't even know the flame was there until you painted it, and it's like, wow, there's like this real light flame, just a hint. I mean, honestly, all those great guitars that recorded all those great songs were just flat saw necks.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to make your tone a whole lot better by doing it. So all that leaves is the appearance, because that's, at that point, to me, is the only thing that's left that's different. And if it don't feel cool when you're holding it, then, you know.
Pick up another one.
Guitars are like girlfriends.
I hear you.
The minute you think you got the one you're going to marry, something better walks by, you know. What's that over there?
Eric Johnson, just buy more guitars.
Right.
Just like wives, get more wives.
Well, who here likes to tune? Who likes to tune their guitar?
It's a way of life.
Well, what I'm saying is, like, say you got your guitar tuned and you're playing a song. It's like, I think I'll do something in open G.
Oh.
No, you're not, because you're going to have to retune your guitar. We're all lazy. That's why you need two guitars. One tuned to an open G, one not. Or at least that's what you can tell your wife.
That's a good excuse for a wife.
Different tuning.
Those Eric Johnsons are really good strats. They're really
They are,
strats.
I'm not sure what those pickups are, but I've had a couple of requests to put them on some of the master builds I've done, and I actually did one on my own accord just because I wanted to see what all the hubbub was. But they're actually kind of going against the grain of instead of everything I'm doing has extra wounds, these were actually like less output. Turn up the amp a little bit louder, stuff that kind of affects the way the strings are getting pulled in, and you know what you hear is kind of affects how you pick, and it all kind of starts to cycle in.
They were done specifically for that guitar. I mean, he went through like 20 different sets before he settled on the one that he wanted.
What's it like to work for Jeff?
It's like Groundhog's Day. Olympic wide strat, another one. But there's something afoot. I got an email on Tuesday. I didn't get a chance to answer, but he was asking questions like, "Why do you keep giving me this pickup configuration with these pots?" And of course, the short answer is like, "Because that's what you spent out, and you're going to keep getting that until you tell me otherwise." But he doesn't like to be involved in that. It's just like when he's done playing, it's like, oh, I don't want to talk about guitars. You know, he wants to talk about his dogs. He wants to talk about, you know, his hot rods, you know, anything but guitars. So it's kind of hard to pull that information from him. And
My solder nut was changed on the Jeff to the old nut instead of the roller.
that's the one, okay, that's Master Built. And the reason why that nut is on there, it's not a better nut. That's the one Jeff uses.
Yeah, right. Why is he like that?
Jeff will find something quirky about a guitar and write a whole song about it or around it. So now it has to have that nut because I get a certain kind of harmonical feedback thing when I do this over here, you know. He'll find the idiosyncrasy of one guitar, and then that becomes part of the solo. And it always has to be done on that guitar because the other guitar doesn't do that. You know, the F sharp isn't sharp enough, or you know, it's hard to explain because when you really listen to his stuff, it's really, there's a lot of bending and you know, feedback and the way things are responding. And it's hard to duplicate that, and you can't duplicate that. So when he gets something that he likes, he won't let go of it.
Speaking about that, is there anything different with his tremolos from standard tremolos? Because he uses the heck out of it.
Yeah, he does. It's the way it's set up.
So it's
that's the same tremolo right there on that guitar. But on his guitar, it's and I can't ship him out that way because if you saw his guitar the way it was set up, you'd go, somebody put the wrong strings on this guitar. The tremolo is all the way forward. You know, like when you change gauges and the balance comes up. Well, his isn't all the way forward. It's damn near all the way forward. He holds it down with his hand, or he puts his pinky into the bar and he pulls. So when it's tuned, the bar, the bridge is forward. So when you hear him dropping a note, it's because he's pulled it up first, and then he's played the note, and then he releases it, and it goes down and stays down. And then he goes on to do other things. So he gets all these like B-bender effects and stuff like that. And beyond the fact that it's always up, it's a full step when you pull it up. So it's floating to where when he pulls it all the way up and it touches wood, it's one whole step on the high E. So it's almost, and the claw is so loose that when you do pull it up, the springs want to just fall off the claw because there's no tension on them at that point. And so I can't ship them to a store like that because one is you don't play that way. It's not going to do you. It's not going to do you any good. It's set up like Jeff Beck's. I mean, all I can say is if you want that, you're going to have to either request it that way. I wouldn't suggest it, or have somebody set it up that way. But unless you figured out, I'm going to push the bar down here, play this harmonica, lift my hand, and then slide my finger to this note to get this dual, and play a dyad. So one note's going up and the other note's going down. And when you watch Jeff play, it's like what you hear isn't what you see because it's what's going on here. Jeff's guitar has notes that my guitar don't have, so there's